The night sky above Crestwood was unusually clear, the stars twinkling like a million tiny lanterns. Dr. Nora Sinclair sat hunched over the massive telescope in the town's modest observatory, sipping lukewarm coffee from a chipped mug. Astronomy had always been her refuge, a way to make sense of the vast unknown. Tonight was supposed to be routine, another quiet session cataloging celestial phenomena. But then, it happened. A streak of brilliant light blazed across the heavens, tearing through the stillness of the night. Nora's heart raced as she leapt from her chair to the observation window. The object moved erratically, not like a meteor, but with a strange, deliberate motion. It pierced the atmosphere, leaving a fiery trail in its wake, before vanishing behind the silhouette of the dense forest outside town. Nora's scientific instincts kicked in. This was no ordinary meteorite. Grabbing her flashlight and a hastily packed first aid kit, she jumped into her truck and sped toward the woods. The winding roads were dark and silent, save for the rustling of leaves in the cool night breeze. The crash site wasn't far, perhaps a 10-minute drive, but it felt like an eternity. As she approached, Nora spotted an orange glow flickering through the trees. Parking at the forest's edge, she ventured cautiously on foot, flashlight cutting through the shadows. The scent of scorched earth and singed wood filled the air. Then she saw it, a small craft, sleek and organic in design, embedded in a shallow crater. Its surface shimmered like liquid metal, faintly pulsing with light. Nora's breath caught. This was no human-made object. As she moved closer, she heard a faint, high-pitched whimper, almost like a cry. Her flashlight beam landed on a small figure huddled beside the craft. It was a child, or at least, it appeared to be. She was tiny, no older than 6 or 7, with shimmering, pale blue skin and hair that seemed to flow like liquid silver. Her eyes, wide with fear, glowed softly, resembling miniature galaxies. She was wrapped in a tattered, iridescent fabric that clung to her fragile frame. Nora froze. The child stared at her, trembling, clutching what looked like a smooth, oval-shaped device to her chest. She looked terrified, and Nora's instincts shifted from scientific curiosity to maternal concern. "Hey there," Nora said softly, crouching to the child's level. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The girl didn't respond, but tilted her head slightly, as if trying to understand the words. Her breathing was shallow, her entire body radiating a faint, warm light. Nora inched closer, her hands raised to show she meant no harm. "It's all right," she continued, her voice gentle. "You're safe now. Let's get you out of here, okay?" The girl hesitated, her glowing eyes darting between Nora and the wreckage of the craft. After a moment, she extended a small, trembling hand. It felt surprisingly warm in Nora's grip, almost human. "Good," Nora said, exhaling a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Let's go." The child's legs wobbled as she tried to stand, and Nora quickly scooped her up. She was incredibly light, her body almost weightless in Nora's arms. As they moved away from the crash site, the strange craft emitted one final pulse of light before falling dark, its once luminous surface dulling to an unremarkable gray. By the time Nora reached her truck, the girl had curled against her, clutching her makeshift blanket and the odd device. Nora glanced down at her as she gently placed her in the passenger seat. "Who are you?" Nora whispered, more to herself than to the child. The girl blinked slowly, her glowing eyes dimming, and then, for the first time, she made a sound. A single, soft word, spoken in a language Nora couldn't understand. "Kythera," the girl murmured before her eyes fluttered shut in exhaustion. Nora sat behind the wheel, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She didn't know what Kythera meant or where this child had come from, but one thing was clear: her life, and possibly the world, was about to change forever. As she drove back to her home on the outskirts of Crestwood, Nora's mind raced with questions. What was this child's story? Was someone or something out there looking for her? And most of all, what was she going to do now? By the time she reached her house, the girl was fast asleep. Nora carried her inside, laying her gently on the couch. For a moment, she just stood there, watching the child's steady breathing. She didn't know why, but a fierce protectiveness welled up inside her. Whatever this child was, wherever she had come from, Nora vowed to keep her safe. The sun streamed through the curtains of Nora's modest living room, casting a golden glow over the unusual child curled up on the couch. Eleonora had decided to name her after a moon of Jupiter stirred awake as Nora quietly entered the room with a tray of food. "Good morning," Nora said softly, placing the tray on the coffee table. The girl's eyes fluttered open, the faint galactic glow still visible as she blinked. Elara tilted her head, her expression unreadable but curious. She sat up slowly, clutching the iridescent fabric she'd wrapped around herself like a security blanket. When her gaze landed on the bowl of oatmeal and glass of juice, her expression softened, as though she understood the gesture. Nora pointed to the food and mimed eating. "It's food. For you." Elara hesitated, then reached out delicately. She picked up the spoon awkwardly, her small fingers struggling to mimic the motion. Nora suppressed a smile and demonstrated, lifting an invisible spoon to her mouth. Elara mirrored her, tasting the oatmeal cautiously before breaking into a faint, shy smile. "That's better," Nora said, relieved. "We'll figure this out." Over the following days, Nora set about learning everything she could about Elara. The girl couldn't speak much, though occasionally she muttered words in an alien language that sounded melodic but unfamiliar. She seemed to understand some basic Earth words quickly, picking up on yes, no, and even Nora's name with surprising speed. There was something uncanny about her intelligence. Nora would leave her with a puzzle or a simple task, only to return and find it completed in ways she hadn't anticipated. The girl seemed to think in 3 dimensions, visualizing problems in ways Nora could barely comprehend. What fascinated Nora most, however, was Elara's affinity for nature. Animals that would normally flee from human-present squirrels, birds, even a stray cat approached her as if drawn by an invisible force. Nora caught her one afternoon in the backyard, sitting cross-legged in the grass, surrounded by a curious group of rabbits and a few robins perched on her shoulders. She seemed to communicate with them, not with words, but with a quiet presence that put them at ease. "Who are you?" Nora asked under her breath, watching from the kitchen window. One evening, while Elara slept, Nora sat in her study poring over data from the observatory. She had been preoccupied with the girl's origins, but she hadn't forgotten the strange streak of light in the sky that had led her to the crash site. Her instruments had recorded faint signals during the event, but nothing conclusive, at least, not until now. Her computer emitted a soft ping. Nora leaned forward, her eyes scanning the screen. A faint but structured signal had been detected, a pattern hidden within what initially seemed like random cosmic noise. She enhanced the audio, and her heart skipped a beat. It was a series of tones and intervals, clearly artificial in origin. "This isn't just static," she whispered to herself. "It's a message." Suddenly, she felt a presence behind her. Turning, she saw Elara standing in the doorway, her glowing eyes fixated on the screen. Without a word, she approached, her gaze intent. Nora hesitated, then pointed to the signal. "This," she said. "Do you know what it is?" Elara tilted her head, then reached out and tapped the screen lightly. The tones repeated, and she nodded slowly, her small hand pressing against her chest as if to say, "Me." "You sent this?" Nora asked, stunned. Elara shook her head, then mimed lifting her hand to her lips and releasing it into the air like blowing a kiss to the stars. "Someone sent this, for you?" Nora interpreted, her voice tinged with disbelief. Elara nodded, her expression solemn. Nora felt a chill run down her spine. Someone or something out there was searching for Elara. But who? And why? The next day, Nora decided to test Elara's knowledge further. She brought out a simple star chart, one she often used to teach local kids about the constellations. Placing it on the dining table, she pointed to the familiar outline of the Big Dipper. "This is Earth," she said, tapping a small dot in the Milky Way's spiral arm. "Where are you from?" Elara stared at the chart for a long moment before picking up a pencil. Her movements were slow, deliberate. She circled a star near the constellation Lyra Vega, Nora realized with a start. Then, beneath the star, Elara drew an intricate symbol, one that looked like a combination of geometric shapes and flowing lines. It didn't resemble any language Nora had ever seen. "Is this your home?" Nora asked. Elara nodded, her expression growing somber. She pointed to herself, then to the symbol, then raised her hands in an explosion-like motion, miming destruction. Nora's stomach dropped. "Your home, it was destroyed." Tears glistened in Elara's eyes as she nodded again. She reached for the pencil and added more to the drawing smaller stars surrounding Vega, connected by lines. Then she circled one of the smaller stars and pointed to it, then to the message Nora had received. "Someone from there is looking for you," Nora guessed. Elara's eyes lit up, her earlier sadness replaced by a glimmer of hope. She clutched the pencil tightly, her tiny hands trembling. Nora's mind raced. This wasn't just a lost child. Elara was part of something far bigger than Nora had anticipated. If her home had been destroyed, and someone was searching for her, then it was only a matter of time before they found Earth. And that might not be a good thing. Later that night, Nora sat on the couch, watching Elara as she slept peacefully. The girl's luminescent skin cast a soft glow over the room, her breathing slow and steady. Nora's protective instincts warred with her scientific curiosity. There was so much she didn't understand: who Elara was, why she had been on that craft, and what had happened to her home. But one thing was clear: Elara wasn't safe. If someone was looking for her, others might be, two others with less benign intentions. Nora's jaw tightened. Whatever the danger, she would protect Elara. No matter what. The faint glow of the girl's skin dimmed as she slept on, oblivious to the storm gathering just beyond the stars. The peaceful days following Elara's arrival were short-lived. Nora's quiet life in Crestwood unraveled when the first visitor appeared. It began subtly, strange lights in the sky, hovering too long in one place to be mistaken for planes. Townsfolk whispered about UFOs, but Nora dismissed the rumors as coincidence. Then came the surveillance men in black SUVs parked down the street, their occupants pretending to read newspapers while watching Nora's house. Even the forest seemed to hum with an unseen presence, as though the trees themselves were holding their breath. One evening, as Nora was reviewing data in her study, a sharp knock echoed through the house. Elara, who had been drawing at the dining table, froze, her glowing eyes widening in fear. Nora placed a hand on her shoulder. "Stay here," she whispered. She opened the door to find a man standing on her porch. Dressed in a sharp black suit, he was tall and gaunt, with unnervingly pale skin. His dark sunglasses reflected Nora's wary expression. "Dr. Sinclair," he said, his voice smooth but devoid of warmth. "I'm Agent Moore. I represent an organization tasked with monitoring extraterrestrial activity on Earth." Nora stiffened, gripping the doorframe. "And what does that have to do with me?" "We've detected anomalous readings in this area," Moore continued, his tone detached. "Unusual signals, energy fluctuations. We believe you might have encountered something or someone uncommon." "I don't know what you're talking about," Nora lied, keeping her expression neutral. Moore tilted his head slightly, as if assessing her sincerity. "If you come across anything strange, I urge you to contact us. It's in your best interest and the interest of national security." Before she could respond, he handed her a card, then turned and walked back to the black SUV idling at the curb. As the vehicle disappeared down the street, Nora shut the door, her heart pounding. When she turned around, Elara was standing in the hallway, her face pale and her hands trembling. "They know," Elara whispered, her voice hesitant but clear. It was the first time she had spoken in English beyond basic words. Nora knelt in front of her, gripping her shoulders. I won't let them take you, Alara. I promise. Over the next few days, the situation escalated. Unmarked drones hovered near the house, their cameras whirring audibly. Strangers loitered in the town square, asking questions about strange lights or new arrivals. Nora took precautions, drawing the curtains and installing locks on every window, but she knew it wouldn't be enough. The true breaking point came late one night. Nora awoke to the sound of glass shattering. Bolting upright, she grabbed the flashlight on her nightstand and ran to the living room. There, she found Alara crouched behind the couch, her eyes glowing fiercely as a group of armed intruders humans, dressed in tactical gear, stormed through the broken window. Get her, one of them barked, but before they could advance, Alara raised her hand. The air around her seemed to ripple, and suddenly the intruders were thrown backward by an unseen force. One hit the wall with a sickening thud, while the others scrambled to their feet, their weapons forgotten. Alara's glow intensified, her expression both terrified and determined. Enough, a deep, resonant voice boomed, freezing everyone in place. Nora turned to see a figure emerging from the shadows, a tall, armored alien with shimmering, obsidian-black skin and glowing red eyes. He carried a staff that radiated energy, and his presence was overwhelming, as if the air itself bent around him. The intruders fled without hesitation, vanishing into the night. The alien turned his gaze to Alara, who shrank back, clutching Nora's hand. Princess Alara, the alien said, bowing slightly. I am Zoreth, your guardian. Nora stepped protectively in front of Alara. Who are you, and what do you want with her? Zoreth regarded her with a calm but imposing demeanor. I serve the royal family of Arcturus. The princess was lost during an attack on our planet. I have searched for her across the galaxy. She is the last of her kind and the key to ending the war that has ravaged our people. Alara's grip on Nora tightened. I don't want to go, she said softly. Nora's heart broke at the fear in her voice. She's just a child, Nora argued. She's been through enough. Can't you see that? Zoreth's expression softened. I understand your concern, Earthling. But the princess's life is not her own. She carries the legacy of an entire civilization. Before Nora could respond, a deafening roar shook the house. Through the shattered window, she saw a massive ship descending, its sleek design bristling with weapons. The ground trembled as it landed in the field behind the house. Zoreth turned sharply. We don't have much time. They found her. Who? Nora demanded. Arcturian separatists, Zoreth said grimly. They wish to exploit the princess's lineage to seize power. If they capture her, they will destroy everything she stands for. The attack was swift and brutal. Separatist soldiers poured out of the ship, their weapons blazing. Zoreth defended the house with a force field generated by his staff, but the barrier flickered under the relentless assault. Nora grabbed Alara and pulled her toward the back door. We have to run, she yelled. No, Alara said, her voice steady despite the chaos. I can stop them. Before Nora could protest, Alara stepped forward. She raised her hands, and the air around her seemed to hum with energy. A glowing sphere formed between her palms, pulsating with light. She thrust it forward, and a shockwave erupted, sending the separatists flying and disabling their ship. As the dust settled, Alara collapsed into Nora's arms, exhausted but alive. Zoreth approached, his expression a mixture of awe and respect. The princess's power has awakened. She is stronger than I anticipated. Nora held Alara close, glaring at the alien. She's a child, not a weapon. If you want to protect her, you're going to have to do it without turning her into something she's not. Zoreth nodded solemnly. You are right, Earthling. She must choose her own path. But her enemies will not stop until she claims her rightful place. The war will follow her here. Nora looked down at Alara, who had fallen asleep in her arms, her face peaceful despite the turmoil around her. "I'll protect her," Nora said quietly. "No matter what." Zorth stepped back, his red eyes glowing softly. "Then I will stand with you. Together, we will prepare her for what lies ahead." The days after the attack felt like a dream, a chaotic blur of preparation, uncertainty, and uneasy alliances. Zorth, true to his word, remained at Nora's side, helping fortify her home and training Alara to control her burgeoning powers. The once quiet house became a hub of alien technology and strategy sessions, with holographic maps of the galaxy projected onto Nora's dining table and alien languages echoing in the halls. Alara adapted quickly to the training. Under Zorth's guidance, she learned to channel her energy with precision, creating protective shields and harnessing bursts of power strong enough to topple a small building. But despite her growing strength, the weight of her destiny loomed heavy. She was no longer just a lost child, she was a symbol of hope for an entire civilization. One evening, as the three of them sat in the living room, Zorth shared the full story of Alara's lineage. Her parents, King Kale and Queen Astria, had ruled Arcturus during a time of prosperity. But when separatists sought to claim the planet's resources, war broke out. During a desperate escape from an ambush, Alara's escape pod had been launched into space, carrying her far from the devastation. "You are the last of the royal bloodline," Zorth said, his voice reverent. "With your return, the people of Arcturus will have a chance to rebuild." Alara listened in silence, her small hands gripping the fabric of the couch. Finally, she turned to Nora. "Do I have to go?" Nora knelt in front of her, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. "You don't have to do anything you don't want to, Alara. But if you do choose to go, we'll make sure you're ready." Alara looked down, her glowing eyes dim. "I'm scared." Nora hugged her tightly. "I know, sweetheart. But you're not alone. You have me, and you have Zorth. We'll face this together." The next day, Zorth revealed the Arcturian fleet's arrival. Dozens of sleek, crystalline ships descended into the skies over Crestwood, their shimmering hulls refracting sunlight into rainbows. The townsfolk gathered in awe, their fears of the unknown tempered by the beauty of the alien visitors. The largest ship, a majestic vessel shaped like a crescent moon, landed in the field behind Nora's house. A delegation emerged, led by an elder named Lysara, who had served as an advisor to Alara's parents. Her flowing robe sparkled with embedded starlight, and her voice carried both authority and kindness. "Princess Alara," Lysara said, bowing deeply. "Your people await you. With your return, we can unite the fractured factions and bring peace to Arcturus." Alara clung to Nora's hand, her gaze darting nervously between the delegation and the ship. "What if I fail?" she whispered. Nora crouched beside her, speaking softly. "You've already survived more than most people could imagine. You've got a strength inside you that no one can take away. And you won't be alone, you have all of us." Alara took a deep breath, her luminous skin brightening slightly. "Okay," she said finally. "I'll go. But only if Nora comes too." Lysara hesitated, glancing at Zorth. "The princess is correct," Zorth said. "Dr. Sinclair has been her protector. Her presence may provide the support the princess needs." Lysara nodded. "Very well. Dr. Sinclair, you are welcome aboard." The journey to Arcturus was a marvel. Nora had never imagined she would leave Earth, let alone travel aboard an interstellar ship. The interior of the vessel was both advanced and organic, with walls that pulsed softly, like a living organism. Alara stayed close to Nora, though she seemed fascinated by the viewports that displayed the vibrant colors of hyperspace. When they arrived, the sight of Arcturus took Nora's breath away. The planet, once a gleaming jewel of blue and green, was scarred by war. Massive cities lay in ruins, and vast stretches of land bore the marks of bombardments. Yet there was beauty, two fields of luminous flora, rivers that glowed softly in the dark, and skies filled with 3 moons. The ship landed in a grand citadel that had survived the destruction. The remaining factions of Arcturus were gathered, their representatives waiting anxiously for the princess's arrival. As Alara stepped forward, the crowd fell silent, their eyes fixed on her glowing form. For a moment, she hesitated, looking back at Nora, who nodded encouragingly. Alara straightened her small shoulders and spoke in the melodic language of her people, her voice clear and unwavering. Nora didn't understand the words, but the effect was immediate. The crowd erupted in cheers, their faces alight with hope. Lysara turned to Nora, tears glistening in her eyes. She has accepted her role as heir. The factions will unite under her banner. But peace did not come easily. As Alara assumed her place as princess, separatist forces launched a final, desperate attack. Nora found herself in the middle of the chaos, her scientific expertise called upon to help stabilize the citadel's defenses. Zorath led the charge, his energy staff cutting through enemy lines with precision. In the heart of the battle, Alara displayed the full extent of her abilities. Hovering above the battlefield, her small frame radiated with blinding light as she unleashed waves of energy that incapacitated the separatists without taking lives. Her compassion and strength brought the fighting to an end, forcing the separatist leaders to surrender. With the war over, Arcturus began to yield. Alara was crowned queen in a ceremony that blended the traditions of her ancestors with her own vision for a united future. Nora stood by her side, tears streaming down her face as she watched the girl she had come to love as a daughter ascend to her rightful place. "I'll miss you," Alara said, clutching Nora's hand tightly after the ceremony. "You'll see me again," Nora promised. "And no matter where you are in the galaxy, you will always have a home on Earth." When Nora returned to Crestwood, the house felt empty without Alara's laughter and light. But as she looked up at the night sky, she saw a new starry signal from Arcturus, a reminder of the bond they shared and the hope that one small girl had brought to an entire planet.